BassEdge Radio. You're listening to The Edge, everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from Megaware KeelGuard Studios.
Yo, 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 here we go. The December 1 episode of BassEdge Radio. Welcome back to the program, Aaron. I'm just getting out of my nocturnal sleep over Thanksgiving. Here we are, the middle of the week, and I'm just getting started after that nice holiday last week.
Yeah, good food, good football, depending on where you were at. Probably some good weather in some places, you know. But, hey, Kurt, fun episode today because we do have a bit of a, I'd call it a pretty big announcement.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have an announcement today, and excited what we're going to be able to do for some listeners that participate in the program. And we always get some great participation. Super thank all those BassEdge supporters out there.
Speaking of participation and supporters, we can't, forget to mention, I almost let that slide by, but, our good friends, Megaware KeelGuard, day one partners with BassEdge Radio, and that, of course, all things that needs to be accessorized on your boat or personal watercraft can be found at KeelGuard.com. First do-it-yourself keel protector, the skate guard, flex step, battery guard, all those things. Be sure, last minute, still got those shipped for Christmas.
Very important information. I think we should have a contest, like how fast can we read all of Megaware's, products? Like, we have to do like a time clock, and you have to read every one.
I think you should come up with a rap.
That'd be, oh, wow.
I was gonna say auctioneering, okay, but that's probably rap is probably more your style.
The challenge has been set. 2022 will be a new year. It could be a new jingle. Let's just say that. We'll see what we can come up with. But man, to talk about jingle, bro. How about the event that went down over at Table Rock Lake? I'm, unable to participate. I was so sad when I saw it to announce, but the Bass Pro Shops U.S. Open, $1 million freaking dollars. Congrats out to Logan Parks, Tucker Smith. Man, these young men have been just absolutely on a tear. If you're a crazy nut about fishing, if you follow college fishing, and they were a college team of the year, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, stout, and when I look at, obviously, I will say, Kurt, there were some sticks that was fishing that, not only from a kind of all over the country, but also local. And right. I also want to just throw a congrats out to Chris Martin and Kevin Burnett. They finished third, but they were the highest finishers of the local crowd. And, to see what Logan and Tucker did under that pressure and just to get there, you're talking 350 boats, Kurt?
Yeah, 350 boats. I think they narrowed it down to 250 after day one, then the final 50 after day two for it was not cumulative, which was kind of cool. I think it was cumulative of the first 2 days to make the top 50, and then the final day was just a 50-boat shootout, 50 teams for $1 million, dude. Dude, this is one of the coolest, I don't know, give backs. I don't know what Johnny Morse, the owner of Bass Pro was thinking, but
I think it was because of the 50-year anniversary, and you're exactly right. It was his own money that was put into this, and to give back to the anglers that, he said has given so much to him, and just to make the sport better, and the way they did it with those qualifiers all over the country. It was not an easy road to get there. I know that.
No. Very cool stuff. Folks can check that out. You Google anything you want about U.S. Open Bass Pro Shops. If you haven't heard about it, didn't see it, didn't follow it, man, they've got a lot of great information on their website. Who knows? What do you think? You think this is just a one-year deal, one-time shot, Aaron, or you think it's going to continue?
I really don't know the answer to that. I've been thinking a lot about that myself, Kurt. With the turnout that happened, I would think there's going to be some version of it. Right. Can I say that there was, going to be $1 million every time? I don't know, but everybody that I talked to said, at least like the Bull Shoals tournament, the Grand Tournament, those tournaments were the best run tournaments that they've ever been to. And these are people that are very seasoned and fish a lot of tournaments. So anyway, it'll be exciting to keep up with.
Yeah, the cool thing about those events, I think most of the participants were, primarily amateurs, so it wasn't like a whole lot of cutthroatness. It was people going out just enjoying bass fishing. And if you happen to catch a really good bag of fish, in all the qualifying events that, you won $50K. So, dude, it wasn't just the 1 million. It was like 6-7 qualifying events, 50,000 a piece, plus paying through the field. Anyway, if you haven't heard about that event, you need to check it out. Just to go back and read the news, because it was pretty cool. Talking about reading news, Aaron, Bass Angler Magazine, as always, appreciate their partnership, and shout out to Mark Lassane. If you read the recent stuff with Bass Angler Magazine, Aaron, did you see that $35,000 in the Hobie Tournament of Champions event won by
Kristen Fisher, right?
Absolutely, dude. That girl is killing it. I'm just going to tell you, I've seen some of her YouTube stuff, and dude, she fishes everything in that kayak world. I don't care who puts it on. Dude, if there is a championship, you see her in it, and dude, she's typically catching them, like whacking them. So that was pretty cool to see as well. But hey, look, we that's a huge opening segment, a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about in the next segment too, before we get to our Lucas Oil Angler Spotlight later on in the show, Aaron. But y'all stay tuned. We've got a Protect the Harvest tackle tip coming up right now. BassEdge Radio. This episode's ProtectTheHarvest.com tackle tip with MLF Pro Circuit Angler Nick LeBrun.
Hey guys, I just want to share with you some kind of a fall fishing transition into wintertime tip. When I'm searching for schools of bass that are shallow, related to grass, related to shad, a 1/2 ounce Bill Lewis rattle trap is my go-to for a search bait. I love throwing something like a retro crawfish pattern, or sometimes just a plain old chrome blue, but I'll throw that on 18-pound Sunline SC Sniper fluorocarbon paired with a Fitzgerald Bronze Wrist Series 7.4 heavy cranking rod with a Fitzgerald VLD 10 high-speed bait cast reel. But a lot of times after you find the fish and locate it and a cold front hits, sometimes they don't want to get fired up. But a lot of times you can take that same group of fish and downsize to a 1/4 ounce Bill Lewis rattle trap in the same exact color, and downsize your line to maybe it's a 14-pound SC. And if you crawl that trap through those same areas, you'll get crushed and get the school fired up. So that's just a good tackle tip to find and locate schools of bass in the fall, but then when they stop biting, how to still keep them fired up the next day or two. Hope that helps, and hope that helps you catch a few more fish this fall.
Absolutely, Nick. Great tip. Brought to you by ProtectTheHarvest.com.
First by land and now by sea. For years, Lucas Oil has been a staple in high-performance vehicles on both the road and track. Now, from the makers of Lucas Oil comes Lucas Marine products, specifically engineered for marine applications. Protect and lubricate your marine inboard, outboard, or high-performance boat with Lucas Marine Engine Oil or Lucas Synthetic-Based Oil. Learn more about the complete line of Lucas Oil and marine products. Visit lucasoil.com.
Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Get pro-level performance with the Nitro Z18, the official boat of Major League Fishing. The Z18, with its nimble handling and versatility, sports many of the features in the larger boats in the line, like a Guardian Live Well, a heavily insulated cooler, dual 8-foot rod storage, and our smooth and fast NVT hull. Every Nitro boat is laid out to do one thing very well: catch fish. Enormous front decks, up to 45 square feet on the Z21, allow maximum mobility when battling unruly bass, and feature low-profile gunnels for ease of skipping, pitching, flipping, or landing fish. Nitro Performance Bass Boats, pure fishing machines.
Aaron, you alluded to a little announcement in the last segment. Break it down for us, buddy. I'm excited to hear about it, excited to see what is new right here on BassEdge Radio.
New incentives, new motivation. Listener questions obviously have been coming in over the years. We're making a little change. New partner has stepped up, and Midway USA, Kurt. And you know the cool thing about it is, and what am I talking about are gift cards. So we're not talking about some bumper sticker here. We're talking about a gift card that can actually be spent on all things fishing, all things hunting related. If you have not been over there, I mean, what they have done, they're kind of new to on the fishing side within the last 14, 15 months. But very excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, they got a great site, midwayusa.com, just a great e-commerce platform. I was perusing it, and dude, they got every Megaware product available on the site, 6 products. So that's kind of cool to see, but they got tons of stuff, man. Rods, reels, lures, all kinds of great things. So I'm excited that we can provide this for the listener question. I know we've been giving out some great gifts, some BassEdge apparel, I think, every once in a blue moon. We also throw in some of the old BassEdge television series, Sonar Electronics DVD, but this, Aaron, a whole new level. Nothing like being able to pick out what you want right there on Midway USA. So excited about that.
Absolutely. And the way to get that, just a reminder, be sure, you're going to hear us say this multiple times, be sure, send in the listener questions either through the website on Ask the Pro or certainly through all the social media channels out there. And we're going to be able to get the Midway USA gift cards sent directly to you. Kurt, kind of transitioning, shifting gears, I guess with a kind of a heavy heart, let's talk a little bit about Aaron Martens and what he has meant so much to the sport as an individual, as a dad, as a husband, as a friend. I know you have shared a lot of moments with Aaron down through the years.
It was super sad to see the culmination of the illness take Aaron, but what a great individual. How about the outpouring on social media? Very, very apparent that he touched a lot of people. Aaron Martens, what a great human being. I did have an encounter I'll never forget with Aaron out on Kentucky Lake at an Elite Series tournament. We were both fishing the same ledge. There was probably 4 or 5 boats fishing this particular ledge, and Aaron and I were pretty close to one another, and we had a chance to chat during the whole process. And Aaron was always fun to talk to. You hear me chuckle, it's just bringing up those memories. He's just such a unique human being, and his thought process was so Aaron Martens oriented, right? I mean, it was just very unique. It was his own thought process. But we were out there drop shotting, and I had a good one on, another 4-pounder. There was a lot of fish on this ledge, and the fish came off, just pulled off. Just one of those deals how, a fish will pull off on a drop shot every once in a while. And this particular fish, I don't know, skin hooked, whatever, pulled off. Aaron says, "Hey, man, have you tried my new drop shot stuff, man? Maybe you have some good luck if you tried my new drop shot design." And he was talking about all this stuff, but oh man, I wish you didn't lose that. He was cheering me on at the same time, trying to help me catch fish, at the same time trying to help himself catch fish. And that's just the kind of guy he was, man. He was just super in tune to the game, a good individual, great to be around, fun to be around. You always left a conversation or encounter with Aaron thinking, man, that's a special dude.
Yeah, for sure.
Time.
And Kurt, to echo that, we were early on in the BassEdge project.
Right.
We were down in Orlando, I think, at ICAST, and getting ready to set up to do Aaron and I were going to do an interview, and actually, just so that listeners know, so that I'd be sure and get this in, episode 221, most recent episode on BassEdge, and certainly can key on that and listen to that interview. But, there was always the joke of, because obviously with our names, and his was Martens, mine obviously being Martin. And he was joking about our names, and I said, I apologize. I said, because people will often think, that we're the same person, BassEdge and that. And I said, that's a far cry from the truth. And, I only wish I could be at your level. And, with dead serious, and he meant this. This was what was so cool. He said, Aaron, there's only going to be one Aaron Martens, and there's only going to be one Aaron Martin. So and I'm like, dude, but he always had a way of just simplifying things, even in fishing and that, but he always a genuine person. So, being our age and just, anyway, just a lot of good things there of how he revolutionized the sport. So
yeah, again, go back, listen, as you just mentioned, episode 221, great episode, BassEdge Radio with Aaron Martens, and just rest in peace, brother. We'll see you on the other side for sure. Y'all stay tuned. The Lucas Oil Angler Spotlight coming up next right here with BassEdge Radio.
I am BASS Elite Series Angler Matt Airy.
This is Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Bill Owen.
This is BASS Elite Series Angler KJ Quinn.
This is BASS Elite Series Pro Jake Whitaker.
I am Pro Angler Brett Height. Stay tuned for more BassEdge Radio.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
Aaron, making that fall to winter transition, always an interesting time of year. We're lucky to have a shallow water expert in the BassEdge crew. You know, he's part of the crew, right? I don't know how many times this guy's been on the show, but he's been here from day one, I'm going to say. He was part of the BassEdge television show back in, 06, 07, 08 time frame, and super stoked to have this shallow water expert in talking about early winter, how to be effective on the water. We've got him, MLF Pro Circuit Angler James Niggemeyer, back right here in the BassEdge studios. Bro, great to have you back on the show again, James.
Kurt and Aaron, thank you guys for having me. It's good to chat with both of you guys at the same time because it's like we're getting the band back together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear you. James, before we just dive off into kind of the fishing techniques and know-how, man, let's reminisce a little bit and catch up on how you've been since we last chatted, at least on BassEdge Radio on September 2018. I've seen a couple good years with MLF Pro Circuit, making that title championship in 2020, and I'm sure looking forward to the 2022 season.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, it was 2018 the last time we got together. Actually, quite a bit's happened. Since then, I've tried to make a more concerted effort to really work on rounding out my social media presence, been working on my YouTube channel and getting that up and running. And then as well, we're really kind of taken back that my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer about a year ago in September. And she and I, but she really handled it like a trooper and worked through it all the surgery and all the treatments. And we're very thankful. We thank God that she's now free of any evidence of disease. So we've had a lot going on, but we're doing well. And definitely looking forward to 2022. It's always that time of year, you're kind of excited for the holidays, but at the same time, you're like, okay, I know that as soon as Christmas and New Year's is over, it's time to get going. But that's kind of what's been going on with me. And I try not to get too far down the road as far as my schedule is concerned, as far as looking at the tournaments down the road. So for right now, I just kind of focus on, maybe putting the pieces in place for that first event. And then kind of after that, I'll kind of look at the next one and the next one after that, instead of trying to take them as one big bite.
Right.
But yeah, that's what's going on with me. It's been kind of had a lot going on, and it's again, we're super thankful that my wife is she's doing great. We're doing well, thanks.
Yeah, James, that's awesome to hear that Sandy's doing well, and your last couple of years been interesting. That last time we chatted, interestingly enough, I'm sure you remember, you finished second in the FLW Tour Championship back in 2008, if I remember correctly.
2018, right?
Or 2018. Yeah. Sorry.
Right.
So that was the last time we had you here on the program, and as you just discussed with the listeners, lot of things going on. Interesting. One thing you talked about there was working on your social media stuff and doing a lot through your YouTube channel. That's kind of keeping you on the water, because I am a James Niggemeyer fan. I watch James's YouTube videos, and it's great to see him on the water doing a lot of tips and techniques. And so we're going to kind of break down some of this late arrival of cool weather. We have broken down fall fishing. Aaron can attest to this. lots over the last 5 or 6 episodes, because it has been kind of one of those lingering falls. Aaron was even talking about pre-show about water temps up at Table Rock still being in the mid 60s and things really not blooming into that fall. But we're going to get some of that cool weather. Really wanting to break down what your thought process is in getting to that winter fishing patterns in your home East Texas there around Lake Fork, Lake Athens, all those great Northeast Texas lakes. You're a shallow water guy. How do you keep that shallow water accessible, and what are you looking for in that early winter fishing patterns?
Yeah, usually it does kind of linger here, unless we have, some really hard cold nights, some, even, below 32, that kind of, or in the 30s at all. And it usually does kind of just a slow progression, kind of like where you're at Lake Amistad. It just kind of fades from one season into the other. And that's kind of the way it can be here. And usually it's kind of I think the thing that really kind of lets me know things are changing is in that fall, you'll see a lot of presence of bait, shad, shallow, whatever type of minnow prey fish that's in the lake. That's going to be shallow, and you'll see that. And then once you start moving into that winter time, it's kind of a temperature thing too. Once it gets into the mid to high 50s, somewhere in there, there's not as much bait there, or you really notice that the bait doesn't really get moving until after 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll start to see some dimpling on the surface or in the shallows, and then that will disappear too. And then you're starting to go, okay, we're moving out of fall into winter. And that's definitely kind of a big sign for me in this area. I have to think about that. What is it that really kind of leans me one way or the other? And that's probably the biggest thing is you just don't see that the fish chasing them, and you start to see them on the graph deeper. You're starting to see that bait out more, and even suspended over deeper water, maybe not quite 30 or 40 feet of water or 20 or 30 feet of water, but you start to see it, down 10 to 15 feet of water, or 8 to 12 feet of water, something like that. And over in the middle of coves and different things like that, you just don't see that bait up shallow anymore. And that's kind of my sign. I think that's the big thing that lets me know, okay, we're rounding out this fall type stuff.
So, James, when you start to see that, I mean, for those that might be new to BassEdge and kind of your, style of fishing, you're predominantly a shallow guy. When you see that, do you still try and stay in on the shallows? And if so, is there a certain type of structure or cover or things that you will gravitate to that you feel that, that fish are going to be holding on kind of as we approach into the December month and on into winter?
Absolutely. There's a lot of places that you'll see them kind of gravitate towards. And then, of course, then that's where I'll be as well. And if I'm fishing, my home lake, Lake Fork, if I'm doing some guiding, I will fish deep there just because over the years, I kind of know where to look and what places they continually historically show up at. But for me as a pro fisherman, in this time of year, and even just for fun, if I'm going out for fun, I'm looking at a few different types of cover types, and that's rock, wood, and grass, and even docks. There'll be some fishing on docks, deeper docks, and so I'll look at those 4 types of cover types. And generally, the further we get into winter, we're moving away from those types of cover types on little flatter type topographies to more creek channel related ones. So then you start to, as it gets colder and moves more into winter, we're looking at having the access to a creek channel, having the access to deeper water near those types of cover types, like the grass, the wood, the docks, and the rocks. So that's kind of what I really try to key in on. And then I'll fish those mid-range creek channels, kind of that, say, 6 to 15 feet of water, because I know that those fish would start to get on the edge of those creek channels within a creek arm. So that's where I usually start leaning a little bit more heavier on the jig. It's kind of a fall, late fall or fall into winter. And you could ride that all the way through, December and into January. But fishing the jig around creek channels, even shallower creek channels too, but pitching it around wood, like standing timber, or even just short casting it and then looking for those because obviously in East Texas, we have a lot of timber. So fishing it in and around the wood, the root wads and the timber that's fallen over and the stumps that remain. And those fish will get on that wood that I'm talking about. And then also just fishing that lipless crankbait around the grass and the rocks. Those two places with the lipless crankbait can be really good. Obviously, you can fish that all the way to February to pre-spawn. And I know that sounds wild, but you can pick up that lipless, that striking red eye shad, and just go all the way. And some days are going to be more consistent than others, but also with these cover types and areas, the weather's going to be dependent upon what I'm doing there. You know, sometimes a little bit more overcast, then maybe that grass and that shallow rock will be good. A little brighter jay moving out on those docks could be good. And then relating to that deeper wood or that wood that's in a little bit deeper water. So it's just going to depend on what that weather's like to figure out where those fish will be.
James, as far as, you know, kind of the progression of tactics and lures, you talked about a jig and a little bit, obviously that lipless crankbait. Do you have a systematic approach where you are taking strictly a weather scenario into play and that is going to be how you start? Or do you want to take a day and say, hey, you know, I want to fish something moving and fast in the morning and then kind of begin to slow down after that? Or are you more of a slower fisherman that you want to pick up slower moving tactics and then maybe, you know, pick up faster moving stuff, you know, later on in the day when you start to see some potential shad dimpling or something like that? If you have a warm winter day in that ditches you talk about like 6 of 15 or working some of these other cover types, you know, that you mentioned, the creek channels and rocky areas, those types of things. How does your progression of tactics and lures, how is that determined on a daily basis? What's your thought process there?
When I'm fishing shallow, I kind of center around basically 3 or 4 different lures, and that would just handle pretty much all the fishing I'm going to do in shallow water as you move out of fall and into winter. And that's with a jig, of course. That's going to be huge, whether I'm, you know, pitching it under docks, fishing it around deeper docks, and any kind of brush around those docks, the pilings on docks for those non-floating types, and then on the creek channels. And even it's funny, even some of the bass will live in those creek channels. They'll winter in there through kind of like the halfway mark of a creek. If you're, say, a creek channel or a long creek is 3 miles long, you might have a mile and a half in. There might be some fish in there, and even the back half a mile might have some creek channel bends that those fish will be in. And that's the key too. Obviously, I didn't mention is those bends in the creek channel with wood on them. That's what we're looking for. But the jig. Then the bladed jig as well. Love to throw a striking thunder cricket. That bait's going to catch them. It's a 12-month of the year bait. It really will. Fishing it slower around grass and then on the rock, you know, that's just a great search bait. And I love that bait because it's amazing. It has an amazing ability to just pull fish to the bait. It just there's something about that bait that's unlike any other one we've ever been able to use. But the bladed jig will work right through the coldest times of the year. And then I love a shallow crank, you know, like a KVD 1.5 square bill is awesome. There's a lot of different other types, even some balsa types can be really good, some flat sided ones, and those can be good. And then of course, a lipless crankbait, like that striking red eye shad. There's so many different lipless crankbaits out there, but that vibrating, rattling type bait, those are the baits that I definitely will have on my deck when you hit November and then ride it all the way through the pre-spawn. Like those types of baits, you just seem to be able to always get bit on them. And of course, if you get a little bit of a breeze, I'm going to probably be doing more winding. And then if it slicks off and it's a little bit more brighter, on those dark days and in those windier days, probably going to do more winding with the crankbait and the bladed jig. And then once I get into, you know, more of those bright days, kind of post frontal, then I'm going to probably lean more on that jig. And surprisingly, that lipless crankbait, even on some of the brightest days and slick days, it may not be the best. It might not be the best lure at getting bites, but you can still get bites. It's amazing. It's got an amazing ability to trigger some fish to react to it. But within all those baits, I'm going to be real loose with them. Like I'm going to, even if I think, they ought to be on this, I'm going to try to remain adaptable, try to remain open-minded. That's still something, I don't know how many years I've been doing this, 20 something years. Just try to pound that into my head. Hey, stay adaptable, try to move with them. And, those fish, they just, sometimes when you think, they won't want that, they're eating that. And so that's a key as well in with those baits in that time of year.
James, hit you with one more question before we go to break. What would be some of the differences, obviously there in North Texas, maybe a little bit warmer than some other regions like North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, a little colder up there where Aaron lives than it is down there in Texas.
Yeah.
What kind of advice can you give those anglers, maybe in those, that midsection region of the country, if they're also looking to stay shallow this time of year? Are there any differences that maybe you feel like they need to keep into mind?
I think for that midsection of the country, obviously things are progressing a little bit faster, it's a little bit colder. Paying attention to retrieve speeds is going to be real important. But I feel like a lot of the things that I'm talking about or that I've just mentioned will be able to apply in really anywhere in the country before it gets to where you even have maybe some ice on the water.
Right.
So,
right.
You can definitely, be cognizant of the water temperature, obviously. But it's interesting because in another part of the country, in Missouri, I'm thinking, 55 degrees up there, those fish don't typically react the same way 55 degrees is down here. I feel like those fish in the mid part of the country or even up north or more northern, 55 for them is like, that's not a problem. Where our fish in Texas, 55, they're like, whoa, brakes on, because they just like to stay warm. Yeah. And so you can definitely do some different things. And of course, we have a lot of Floridas down here. Florida strain largemouth. They just don't like that colder water, and they just really don't like overcast days as much as fish in other parts of the country. More those northern strains or those spotted bass or those smallmouth. And so you can definitely do some things with that. And one bait that I didn't mention that I think really kind of goes across all regions of the country, and I've fished it in the shallows as well, is just a jig head swim bait. If I see some bait fish presence in a creek, I can fish, like a Strike King Rage Swimmer swim bait, or a Kitech type swim bait, those types on a jig head. And you can just slow roll those through an area. And you can catch some fish that, man, you might really have a hard time to get them to eat your crank or your bladed jig or your lipless crankbait. That bait will really, especially in the clear water zones, down towards the dam on some of the lakes around here for me, where you have the clearest water, those baits can really get you some bites that you may not get otherwise.
Great tips. All right. You said a couple things there. We're gonna bring them up after the break. You talked about speed of presentation. I think super critical. Going to pick your brain on that. Also, we're going to dive into James's dedication to shallow water angling, specifically in tournament mindset. So hang in there, fellas. We're going to be power pulled down. We're going to be paused for a quick break and be right back with more Bass Edge Radio in just a moment.
Patented in 2000, perfected over years of testing and real-world punishment, the Power Pole is the ultimate shallow water boat positioning tool. Swift, Power Pole deploys in seconds from anywhere in your boat. Virtually silent, Power Pole won't spook wary fish. Secure in strong currents or gusting winds in up to 8 feet of water. Engineered to take it with a lifetime unconditional replacement guarantee on the spike. Power Pole, swift, silent, secure. Visit powerpole.com to find a dealer near you.
Bass Edge, presented in part by Mercury Marine Go Boldly, returns with MLF Pro Circuit angler James Niggemeyer and the Lucas Oil Angler Spotlight. That's right, Lucas Oil high-performance marine products. Be sure to visit the BassEdge.com store for free shipping on all Lucas products. It works. James, right before we went to break there, you had mentioned one of my favorite baits, and that's just kind of that swim bait on the jig head. And, I was discussing with a fellow angler a few days ago about how the speed of a retrieve is often overlooked as a differential factor, for getting some bites versus really no bites at all. I think we're often, just quick to change lures rather than look at how maybe I'm working or utilize a particular bait. Do you have any good experiences that you have to share where lure speed, did make a difference and was more important than switching baits altogether? Because I know just experimenting with, a swim bait, man, when I've slowed it down before, it's just like all of a sudden it's just like the clouds opened up and the heavens shone down on me.
Yeah, and it starts like raining bass. I mean,
exactly.
It is amazing. You'll be fishing an area and think, man, we need to get out of here. There's nothing going on. And you do just a little tweak like that. Maybe you slow down or you speed up. And next thing you know, it's like you start questioning, did they just turn on all of a sudden? Or or was it just that minor adjustment and in my presentation? And definitely that is huge. I definitely think Kurt and I have talked about this. As fishermen, we have this muscle memory where we throw a bait like this and we throw this bait like that, and we just wind it straight back. And we just have this certain way that we fish each lure. Because why? Well, because that's where we caught them. Most of the time we're catching them like this, but there are times when just the retrieve and how you manipulate the bait does definitely make a huge difference in the number of bites. And what I've found is clearly those are the days that it's harder to get bit. Generally. And sometimes, like you said, it just switches from can't get bit at all to we just had a banner day. But it seems like more often than not in a tournament situation, you just seem to have, you can turn a day from, 1 or 2 bites. We had 6 or 7 and we have a decent little stringer we put together. I know I can think back to a time fishing with a buddy here locally on Lake Fork, and we were just out, I want to say it was December timeframe, kind of fishing some of that remnant hydrilla that was left, and little patch on the side of a little high spot, little island top that was below the surface. And he was just getting bit. And I was just, gosh, what am I doing here? And I was thinking, well, he's getting the right lineup, right? So of course, I adjust the boat a little bit here. I'll show you. Let me try to sling one down the hole, and, right. And I still don't get a bite. And what we learned was it was just one of those, what you can as a whole, it seems like year in, year out, there's a time when that lipless crankbait, you just have to reel it just slow enough where you almost barely feel the vibration. It's still there, but it's not like that brrr coming through the water like you normally would. You just barely can feel it, and that's what they want. And I think so much of the time when it's that type of situation, water's colder or whatever, it looks more natural or more like what everything else is like in the water. If you have something just blazing through, it seems like they don't respond as well. And so, yeah, definitely retrieve speeds can be huge. And on that day, we had some really nice fish, and it made a big difference. You were slowing it down and catching a little grass, ripping it free, not even really ripping it, but just kind of pulling it out of there. They didn't want it aggressive. And over the years, there's numerous occasions, probably too many that I've forgotten a bunch, but yeah, retrieve speed's huge.
Yeah, I remember an example of retrieve speed being everything between getting some bites versus no bites down there in those blueback lakes. It was an Elite Series event several years ago, and I'm throwing the Sabile, little hard swim bait, and I'm throwing it up there, and I'm on a 7-to-1 gear ratio, and dude, when I'm winding it back, I'm burning it back. And I had talked to a fellow competitor who was struggling a little bit, and I said, man, they're eating this freaking Sabile. Like, dude, you get on these shallow points and you throw it up there. It's gobble. It's on. And like every point, I catch a fish. Some points, multiple fish, but every point I come to, if I make a bomb of a cast and wind the Sabile back, I'm catching them. Well, he calls me an hour later after running around and hitting, 7 or 8 points. And he's like, dude, I can't get bit on this thing. And I said, hey, man, where are you at on the lake? And I tell him and we're real close to one another. He comes over and I fire the bait up there. And I was like, dude, watch how this works. I fire the bait up there. I'm burning it back. And he's like, dude, it's the speed of retrieve. That was everything, because he's throwing it up there, nice medium retrieve, winding it back, which the bait looks so awesome, right? It's just wiggling back and forth. But dude, with that heavy speed was what those fish wanted. Seen this in a lot of scenarios, guys, and I felt like, even rod angle can play a big difference, whether you're holding your rod tip, winding, let's say, a square bill back, and you're holding your rod tip at 11 o'clock versus holding it at 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock, down toward the water. Even those little things can make a big difference. How that lure is vibrating through the water, reverting back to exactly what you just mentioned, James, about that lipless, about how it's vibrating. It's not, but and I think there's a lot of scenarios where we're quick to change lures, quick to say, oh, they're not biting the thunder cricket today, right? And then just a change of speed or a change of rod angle will make all the difference in the world. And like Aaron said, the heavens open up and it starts raining bass. It's pretty interesting concept. I feel like that is often overlooked for sure. James, I want to talk to another thing, an interesting concept that you have that is something that you've developed over time, over your experience with tournament bass fishing, and that is your dedication to shallow water angling. When I say that to you, just because that we have a close relationship and I understand what that means to me, but what is a dedication to shallow water tournament angling mean to James, and how did you come to the realization or the footprint that sent you into that realm of tournament angling?
I was thinking about how that happened. It wasn't necessarily like, one day I woke up and bam, that was what I was doing. But it was kind of a slow progression in 2013, 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. After being on the Elite Series for a while, I think when I first got on the Elite Series, I was doing that to more of a greater degree because I was a rookie and didn't know, a lot of things, hadn't gone to a lot of the places. So I was like, man, I just got to lean on my strengths and do what I like to do and have fun. And so that's what I did. And then as time went on and you get a whooping here and a whooping there, and you start thinking, well, you weren't doing what you were supposed to do. Everybody else in the top 50 was, doing this or doing that. And you start to try to adapt, like you guys talk about, your angler identity to try to fit what you think you're supposed to do. And that's why, so I went on that tangent for a while. And then, but at the same time, I was noticing tournament after tournament, year after year, it seemed like no matter where we were in the most unlikely places, there'd be a guy in the top 5 or the top 10, and he may not have threatened to win, but he had a great finish. Or I noticed a couple guys in the top 20 or top 30 after the tournament was over, or talking to them, or just finding out through reading tournament reports or whatever, that this guy was fishing shallow and that guy was fishing shallow in the most unlikely places, and probably at the most unlikely times of year for that to happen. And I started to say, you're getting your tail kicked at some places where if you probably would just do what you do, you probably wouldn't have such a, just trying to stay away from those really, tough tournaments, what we call out there a bomb, and so I would just say, well, if that's the case, I'm going to go do something that mentally I feel like I'm as confident as I am at anything. And, growing up in Southern California, man, I did all the deep water fishing, had some great deep water opportunities out there, finesse type light lines and drop shot, split shot, fished around some of the greatest with that light line stuff and fishing deep. And so I'm not afraid of it, don't mind to do it. But what I noticed about my personal track record on tour and tournament performance was when it came to those types of tournaments, my best fishing those deeper type things, fishing those, offshore, those ledges on the Kentucky lakes or the Tennessee River or up north fishing deep smallmouth. It just wasn't there. It just wasn't happening. So basically what I said, if I'm going to take my lumps, I'm going to go down doing something I'm confident in.
Right.
And that's where I just kind of gravitated towards just making that the center focus. And what I noticed was it started to even out some stuff on my stats. But I also noticed I enjoyed it more. There was something about me walking away from a tournament. If I got beat, but I went out there doing something that I love to do, or that I was most confident in, well, I felt like I actually gave it my 100%. I gave it all that I could. And there's something about not doing those things or doing like when I used to try to do what I was supposed to do.
Right. Like go out and drop shot or something out deep or drag a football on a ledge in 20 foot. Yeah.
Right. And I had some disastrous events like that. And I was like, gosh, if you just went up there and caught yourself 12 pounds a day or something, that would have made a big difference, shallow. And I was like, so that's kind of where things kind of started to click for me. And it's one of the things that I'm a very visual fisherman, whether it's fishing topwater, fishing cover, trying to break down, a dock or a tree line or anything that shallow. I love off-colored water, and I love getting up close and personal, making short casts and trying to be stealthy. And I still do some of those, like I'll throw a drop shot and I'll throw a wacky rig and finesse type baits real shallow, but just staying shallow. And I just enjoy it. It's been something where I feel like, and that's where I'm going to go, and that's what I'm going to do. And there's a lot of guys that do that. You have a John Cox, who's just amazingly talented angler, who's predominantly 95% of the time you won't find him, deeper than say 5 feet or less. And then you have Bill Lowen, and there's so many others. And so those are some of the other guys I looked at too. Not trying to compare myself, but
right.
You know, because I think that can be a bad thing to do as a fisherman. But you're just looking at some of the guys around me and going, wow. And then my buddy Takahiro, more times than not, he's power fishing shallow. So I just looked around and said, man, I'm going to try to do this. And I'm really happy that I did. Of course, now with electronics the way it is, I'm starting to peer back over the other side of the fence and look at that grass. It's starting to look a little greener, you know? And so you start to, I don't know. But yeah, there's the same. Here's one thing too, though. I'm not completely, I still challenge myself as a fisherman to learn to get better at the other stuff. And when I'm home and when I'm doing a guide trip, we'll fish deep, we'll catch some fish offshore. And if that's the thing that needs to happen, then we'll do those types of things. But when it comes to tournament competition with a limited amount of time and practice, I've got to rely on my strengths. And that's something that I've kind of come to the realization of, and quite pleased with that. I'm okay with that. I don't, it doesn't bother me. I like it actually.
and I'm gonna double down on this just for BassEdge listeners, just so that they understand. When James talks about, relying on shallow water techniques for his tournament angling, he's not relying on it. He's dedicated to it, right? I mean, over the last 2 years, how many times have you been off of the bank, James, in a tournament scenario, just so the listeners can understand when we're talking about relying on it, it's not just, I'm going to peer up there first and then meander about and see how I can catch one. What does your dedication to shallow water mean?
It means I always start there. I always start shallow. And if I get something going over the first or second days of practice, I might peek out and see what I'm missing. But I'm also I've got my buddy, we can't have any outside information, so we can talk to a fellow competitor. So I talked to my buddy, Kurt Dove, and say, Kurt, how's that deep fishing going? And if it's on, then maybe on the last day of practice, maybe you need to peek out there. But if it's not so good, then I'm like, okay, I'm all in, all the chips to the center. But I might peek around out there, but I'm definitely going to give my best, my most concerted efforts at that. And it's probably, I'm maybe even underestimating it a little bit.
Yeah, you are. I would compare you, James. If we're going to put this in religious terms, I'm just going to go there. You're Apostle Paul. I mean, dude, you're like willing to, you're a disciple of it, so. Yeah,
it's gotten to the point where that's pretty much all I do. I don't expect to even have to look out there. I try not to, because I just feel like my best chance at bringing my best effort in each and every tournament is by doing what I feel like is most fun and I'm most comfortable and confident in. So I just continue to try to stay there. And another thing, a buddy of mine, Dustin Wilkes, who fished the Elite Series for many years, multiple classic qualifier, before he left the Elite Series, he said, I know that you fish a lot like I do. He said, if you fish, let's say 3 days of practice, and you fish all day shallow on the first day and all day the second day, and then you say, yeah, I'm going to leave the third day to go out deep and look around. He said, imagine how much more you'd find if you just stayed dedicated and never looked over your shoulder and just continued to play. He said, how much more you'd have as far as places you get to go to, and potentially the better quality you might find. And I will say that's something that always sticks with me, when he said that, because he was, I know he caught some fish one time on Kentucky Lake out deep, but for the most part, that guy, he was the epitome of stay shallow, turn and burn. He was more of a power guy. He didn't slow down too much. He has a fishing show now, but he's a shallow guy. And of course, he's starting to look at these new electronics too. We were talking not too long ago. He's like, man, I'm going to get this forward shooting technology in there.
That's great.
But yeah, fishing shallow, that's definitely my game plan. And that's what I'll stick to and really enjoy it, like I said.
And Aaron, I thought it was great to bring this up, as a topic of conversation, because, we talk a lot about being versatile. And from a tournament perspective, I think James understands where he wants to go with this thing. And instead of getting caught up in dock talk or other things that can affect, a potential tournament outcome for him, consistency is a huge deal in our sport, making championships, making checks. And I thought this was a great avenue to kind of explain to BassEdge listeners how another perspective can be seen in our sport. It's not all about, well, you go to St. Lawrence River and you're drop shotting in current and 25 foot of water in the middle of August. There's other ways to attack fisheries, Kentucky Lake, Lake Chickamauga, whatever it is. There's fish in generally all aspects of the water column, even in winter, as James is discussing, how to stay shallow in the wintertime and still be productive by changing up, baits, routines, speed of retrieves, all of those types of things. There's a way to, make all this happen, not just following the most traveled path to success. So I thought that was a great conversation for us, especially in James' situation, because he is so dedicated in the shallow water techniques.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, we spent so much time, talking about angler identity. And I think, James, that is one of the things, hats off to you. You know what? You're very secure with who you are. That's for sure, as a fisherman.
And at the risk of sounding like I was downplaying, I know several times where over the last few years, Kurt would say, are you going to spend any time out there? And I know I've said to him, nope, I don't plan to spend any time out there.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I may have downplayed it a little bit, and because I know I'm more, I know I am more dedicated to it than I'm making it sound. But it's definitely the thing that's been my plan of attack, I would say.
Well, quickly, James,
especially in tournaments.
Looking, you brought about, which I love the analogy, don't look over your shoulder. So let's look forward for a second before we head to the listener question here. Looking at 2022, any tournaments that you're salivating over that you see on the schedule that you'll be can't wait to get a fresh start and get out there and get after it?
None really. I mean, I love the fact that we're starting here at Sam Rayburn, none more than others except for two. I love that we're starting at Rayburn, but starting there in the third week of January is not the best time to go there, in my opinion. And the weather can be so fickle that time of year. So it might not show Rayburn's true strength, but I love the fact that I love Rayburn, period, anyways, but I wish we were going a little bit different time. But as far as the rest of the schedule, over the years, I've not gotten too excited about certain venues because there are some venues that I'm like, wow, I'm excited about that or what. But as far as the schedule as a whole, seems like some places where you feel like you're going to do the best, you don't do as well. And then some places where you're thinking like, I don't know about this, you'll do really well. So it looks like a great schedule. And the thing that probably excites me the most is I look at that schedule and there's not one tournament where I'm like, yep, like I think that I even have to look offshore. And even though I'm dedicated to the way that I fish, like we just discussed, there's some tournaments where you'll look at and go, oh, that one might be a hard one that might be a hurdle if you try to stay on the bank. And I don't see that on the schedule next year. But as far as the most looked forward to tournament venue next year, we're going to Lake Champlain. So I love that place. It's just absolutely beautiful. Whether you fish the north end, the south end, anywhere, there's places just full of fish. It's probably next to like Lake Cayuga. I love New York waters, but that's probably my favorite New York body of water, Lake Champlain. I love going up there. The only thing I don't like is it's about a 26-hour drive, and that's it. That's the only thing I don't like about it up there. Well, it can get rough, but that's to be said of any lake. But as far as the schedule goes, Rayburn, the bookends, Rayburn and then Champlain. Those are the two that I'm looking forward to most.
That's funny you mentioned that about New York. When I'm guiding here at Lake Amistad, some people ask me questions about traveling the country and kind of what my thought process is on other places and geographic regions. And people always talk about Florida and Alabama and even Missouri and different places. And I always mention some New York fishery. And then I always make the statement like, New York from a state standpoint is easily top 5 fishing state in the country. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, if you haven't been, you just don't know.
Absolutely. I've had that same conversation so many times. People ask me that. And I think it's because a lot of people think, I want to catch the biggest bass in the lake. And
Right.
I do too. I'm like that with just like everyone else. But you know what I like better than that? I like getting bit. And when it comes to going to New York, you get bit. That's what I like.
That's exactly right. All right, guys, we're going to move into our Nitro Performance Bass Boats listener question segment. This question comes from Justin Smith out of Northern California. James, this might be a tough one to tackle, but I think it's a great question. Justin wants to know what influences the bass seasonal behavior pattern. Is it more based on water temperature, amount of daylight, weather conditions? Typically, he's limited to a single day to fish any given lake. He's trying to find out those seasonal patterns the bass are in to determine what areas of the lake to target on that day he gets to fish. So can you set him off in a direction that'll help him understand from your perspective how to determine that seasonal behavior pattern from an overall standpoint?
That's a great question, Justin. I think it's something that we're always continually trying to get a better grasp on, because we want to find fish faster. That's paramount, and we all have limited amount of time. So that's definitely always forefront of our minds. And I think if I was to try to prioritize the different things, the temperature, the daylight, the weather conditions, I think I would say the amount of daylight probably has as much to do with their seasonal patterns. That'd be number one, I would think. And then number two would be, and probably a close runner-up would be number two, is the water temperature. Because you have your cold years, where we have what we call a cold winter or a long winter. And so temperature is also important as far as that goes too. But and then I think lastly would be the weather is the more fickle thing. I think that's the thing that has more of a day-to-day aspect to how the fish move and what they're doing. But for me, it's definitely when I put my boat in the water, I think that the thing that I'm going to do is first try to assess, okay, let's just say I'm on said lake in whatever part of the country, and I put my boat in the water and it's in the spring and it's say 58 degrees. I'm thinking, okay, there's definitely fish in that pre-spawn pattern. So now I've singled out a high percentage target zone for me. And that's good and bad. It's good for the point that if you have too much to look at, it feels like you never accomplish anything. It kind of puts blinders on you and gives you a target to focus on. And so that's good. If you end up finding them in that pre-spawn or that kind of a pre-spawn, they're feeding up before the spawn, that type of thing, those patterns, fishing fast moving baits or whatever, then that's great, because now you've just made a choice, a decision, you followed through, and bam. But if after a good portion of time you haven't, then you start to broaden out your search a little bit more. But for me, it's always the high percentage things that I like to do the most and most confident in, because when you're searching for those fish, you want to put something in your hand or a few different types of techniques in your hand that even over the course of time during that day, you're not going to lose confidence. You're going to continue to throw those baits, and you can throw them confidently. I think that's important to have that mindset of, hey, I'm going to get a bite at any moment on this bait just because I'm really confident in the way I fish it, and it's been good to me over the years, and I feel like I'm a fish and angler with it. So those are some different things that I would take into consideration that influence the seasonal pattern, but also how I go ahead and try to find fish on a given lake.
Yeah, I think those are great points, James. I also just throw this in there for Justin that, when you throw the dart, while you're driving to the lake and kind of thinking about the fundamentals of fishing, right, which give us those seasonal behavior pattern scenarios. Then once you hit the lake and you've tried something that you thought would be the right deal, don't just do it all day and be unsuccessful, right? Be willing to have some adjustment period, right? If you fish for 2-3 hours and you're having a little bit of success, maybe keep driving that train down that road and it could continue and you run into the right, area that's holding those fish that are in that seasonal behavior pattern. But if you go 2-3 hours and don't get a bite, make some slight adjustments back to the previous potential seasonal behavior pattern or forward to the next seasonal behavior pattern that could be in that zone of confidence from a fundamental standpoint. I think just doing the same thing, especially since you're only getting one day on the water for Justin, would be potentially counter-effective because you don't get the next day to try something else, is where I'm going with that, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent thing to add there, Kurt, for sure. Yeah, you don't want to get stuck with something that that you thought was going to happen, and then all the way through the day you're like, oops, kind of missed it. That's a good point.
Kind of like your earlier comment of, you wanting to get lured out. The sirens are calling you out to the deeper water. The grass is greener. Well, sometimes that grass is green because it's over a septic tank. So anyway, just, but, all right, guys.
Nice analogy.
Yeah. Well,
yes,
hey,
absolutely.
What a fun interview, guys. James, thank you for answering Justin's question. And Justin, hey, we need one more thing from you, and that is to simply log on to BassEdge.com, click the Claim Your Prize tab, fill out the information. Let us know that you heard James answer your question right here on episode 365, and we will get that Midway USA gift certificate, free money, buy whatever you want. They just have about everything for shooting and hunting and the outdoors. We'll get that sent out right out to you.
And a continued reminder to Bass Edge listeners, keep firing those questions to the show through our website, BassEdge.com. Just simply click on the Ask the Pros tab, or follow through our Instagram page or our Facebook page. We're always posting something up there, usually once or twice a month, to submit those questions to the show. We'll choose a question to be answered, and you could be the next winner of that Midway USA gift certificate.
Well, James, there we have it. Another episode of Bass Edge. I do want to say just, a personal thank you. I want all the listeners to know, because obviously we've picked up at least 2 new ones since 2018 along the way. So they may not know, but you are a very, very integral part, kind of the roots of Bass Edge, kind of the backbone that helped all of this come together. So it's always a pleasure, a joy having you on, and your information is always so pertinent and thorough. But before we shut down, any thoughts you want to leave the listeners with?
Oh, well, guys, thank you for having me. And it's great being with you guys and being able to connect with listeners and answer questions. And of course, I love to talk fishing. And one thing that I would say is to the listeners, hey, when you're out there fishing, keep an open mind, and above all else, get out there and enjoy God's beautiful creation.
Well said, James, man. Enjoyed the chat, buddy. Have a great Christmas season. I'm sure I'll talk to you before that all comes to fruition, but also great to hear all the success with your wife, Sandy, man. That's I just want to bring that back around full circle from your opening of the interview, and what a great blessing that is. So happy to hear. And again, just have a great holiday season. Y'all hang right in here, Bass Edge Nation. Aaron and I are going to return with the closing segment right after this message.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard. Be at home with nature with nature-inspired art, decor, and gifts by Wild Wings at wildwings.com. Explore art prints and canvas wraps of bass, trout, walleye, muskie, and more by acclaimed artists like Mark Cicino.
I primarily paint underwater scenes of game fish, and usually in a fishing situation, going after prey or going after a lure or a fly. I get asked sometimes whether I like fishing better or artwork. It would be tough to give either of them up. I can't really think of a good reason to give either up, so I'm going to stick with them.
Make your home, office, or cabin show off your passion for angling. Visit wildwings.com/BassEdge and sign up for an exclusive offer to Bass Edge listeners of 10% off your next order. Give something special to your loved one and be at home with nature. Visit wildwings.com/BassEdge. That's wildwings.com/BassEdge to get 10% off your next order of nature-inspired art, decor, and gifts by Wild Wings.
The PowerPole Charge Marine Power Management Station is the most advanced system of its kind available on the market. It does the work of 3 devices, a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system, all in one compact unit. The Charge lets you run your boat's accessories the way you want to run them by allowing you to monitor and control your power usage through the PowerPole app. It automatically devotes power to the batteries that need it the most for maximum efficiency. The new Charge from PowerPole. Power where you need it, power how you need it, power when you need it.
Kurt, having James on, it's almost like we just had him on last week. It's amazing how he can just pick up right where he left off. But I appreciate just the kind of the tone of the interview, his talking about the angler identity. You can tell he's like really thinking, when he's talking, and I appreciate that about James.
Yeah, he's got a very analytical approach to his game. Over many, many years of experience, has come to some concrete conclusions of what puts him in the best position to catch fish and be successful as a tournament angler. Interestingly enough, being successful as a tournament angler doesn't necessarily mean that that's how he's going to fun fish all the time either. As you talked about him, with his guide service, still fishing out deep sometimes, targeting some fish that maybe he wouldn't target in a tournament situation. But his winter techniques, specifically this early winter type techniques and staying shallow, I think, continue to relate his dedication to that shallow water orientation. And really, I think early winter, even in North Carolina, Missouri, those kinds of areas, those shallow water bass are just as available still as the deep water bass. You just got to change those presentations. Look for some of those key cover ideas that James signified where he would target to be successful for these early winter shallow water patterns.
Yeah, no doubt. Leaderboards, Angler of the Year standings, more importantly, cash flow, right? Show me the money. That has proven the results are there. So whatever he's doing, he will continue to keep doing it until he's absolutely convinced it doesn't work, and then you might see a change. But great stuff from James. Appreciate also all the great questions coming in. Continue to send those in. Want to remind you, there's been a shift. Midway USA gift cards. That's free money. You get to spend that on whatever you like on their website. Yes. We are approaching Christmas, so if you don't have your Christmas shopping done, I encourage you very quickly to get that going, so to make sure that you have that sitting on your doorstep or for whomever you might be buying for. And certainly feel free to visit the BassEdge.com store, visit our sponsors, support them who help support BassEdge. So for Kurt Dove and the rest of the BassEdge crew, I am Aaron Martin, and we look forward to seeing you December 15th for the last episode of 2021 on episode 366. So long, everybody.
The Edge is presented by Megaware KeelGuard. For more information on BassEdge or to shop at the BassEdge online store, visit BassEdge.com. And be sure to join Kurt Dove and Aaron Martin right here on another episode of The Edge. Brought to you in part by Nitro Boats, Lucas Oil, ProtectTheHarvest.com, Mercury Marine, PowerPole, and